We'll speak to you next week.
I'll see you Monday.
Closed captioning of this program is brought to you in part by Group Telecom, providing data, internet applications, and voice services for small and medium-sized business, coast to coast.
Tonight, we've got comedy with Air Farce, It's a Living, This Hour, and Made in Canada, followed by a federal election national town hall. And at 10...
As the federal election heads into its final days, what do the voters think? Find out tonight on The National when Peter Mansbridge hosts a town hall meeting from Halifax.
People in Ontario are headed to the polls to pick municipal governments. In Toronto, the race for mayor may not be close, but it is colorful. Norman Hermont reports.
There are 1.7 million eligible voters in Toronto. From those that do turn up to vote today, the city's mayor isn't expected to have much of a fight.
I hope there's no mistakes like there was in the States.
The mayor may have voted, but city officials are worried many other people won't bother.
We had some polls probably now that haven't even seen a voter in the first hour.
Homelessness, garbage, big issues that the mayor hasn't really had to talk about much in this campaign.
You'd think running for mayor in Canada's biggest city would be a serious business, but in this campaign, that hasn't always been the case.
Here are some of the major opponents to the last-minute campaign machine. There's Enza, the supermodel, the candidate running as a woman who was actually a man.
It takes big bucks to run.
Then there's Ben Kerr, a singing candidate in his 6th run for the top job. This is Lastman's most credible opponent. Tucker Gomberg has had to resort to costumes to get his message out. He began voting day chained to a former hospital that he once opened as a homeless shelter.
This is political theater and it's political action. And this is what you have to resort to when there's no debate about the issues.
In fact, with no well-known opponent, Lastman didn't take part in any debates. That's not his fault, he says.
But the media were the ones who didn't do anything. Where were they? You know, instead of asking me those questions, why don't you ask your boss?
Mel Lastman probably won't pay a political price for the non-debate strategy. By the end of the night, he'll likely be on his way to another term in the mayor's office. Norman Hermont, CBC News, Toronto.
And that's national and international news. I'm Ian Hannah-Mansing in Vancouver. For those of you in Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal, Canada Now continues.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Carol McNeil in Toronto News tonight. Two big stories making news in the city. The city election, of course, which we will get to in just a minute. But first, the rearrest of convicted pedophile Peter Whitmore. The CBC's Wolf Dinnick has been tracking that story all day. Good evening, Wolf.
Good evening. Thanks, Carol. Peter Whitmore has been the focus of a lot of attention and outrage by a lot of people in this city. He was released from jail last month. Now he's been twice convicted of sexual offenses against young children, and the police and neighbors have been watching him closely. Today, police say he broke the terms of his release. It was a trip no one wanted Robert Whitmore to take. He was back in court after apparently breaking the terms of his release from jail. Early this morning, police were tipped that Whitmore was at a downtown hotel with a young boy.
Acting on that tip, we attended at the hotel, Officers Number 52 Division, conducted an investigation, and as a result of the investigation, arrested Mr. Whitmore in company with a 13-year-old male.
The arrest was made just after midnight in a room on the 2nd floor. Police say the boy was not physically harmed, but the sexual assault squad is still investigating.
Well, you know why? I'm not allowing him to live here.
Peter Whitmore couldn't find a home after his release from jail last month. West End residents were furious after learning he had moved into their neighborhood. Whitmore then moved downtown and until recently was under 24-hour surveillance by the police. All the while, his lawyer tried to assure the public
that your children are safe.
For some of the people who had pushed him out of their neighborhood, it was a case of I told you so.
He should not have been left out. That is one thing they should have done. They should have given him a sentence, or they should have left him in a hospital anywhere, but not on the street.
Whitmore's attorney was in court this morning.
I just don't want to make any comment at this point until I know more.
Peter Whitmore will be in court again tomorrow. Now, the fact that his case wasn't heard today is merely a formality. That'll take place tomorrow. It's been moved over till 9 a.m. tomorrow, and that's at Old City Hall. But It's expected that the police are going to ask for a detention order. That means he won't get a chance for bail, and his lawyer says it wouldn't be surprised if that occurred.
Wolf, what do we know about the young boy?
Well, we know that Children's Aid Society won't confirm or deny that that child's in custody. Police did say that they handed the 13-year-old runaway over to Children's Aid Society, but it's their policy not to tell us whether he's there or not. So we know that he is from the East Atlantic Canada, and he's run away several times.
All right,
so.
East Coast, Atlantic Canada. Yes, that's true. Thank you so much. Some parents in Barrie want a public inquiry into the conduct of a teacher who wrote love notes to a 13-year-old student. The teacher, Laura Slater, was reassigned to a different school and later suspended after police laid charges against her. In a petition, the parents say they fear this is just one incident of many, and they want the inquiry to look at the broader issue of school board policy when it comes to dealing with sexual misconduct. Just under 90 minutes to cast your vote in today's municipal election. In Toronto, you won't drop your ballot in a box. Instead, a new electronic counting system will tabulate your vote. City officials say the faster system is exceeding expectations. But there's just one problem. Voter turnout isn't that high. With more on that, here's Mike Wise.
It's a scene taking place in over 1,600 locations throughout Toronto as the city holds its first ever vote as an amalgamated city. And early indications are that this race is attracting fewer votes than the last election.
97 we opened, and at 10 o'clock we had lineups. We didn't have many lineups this morning. We had some polls probably now that haven't even seen a voter in the first hour.
Some observers attribute the small turnout to a lack of a clear race for mayor. But that talk angers mayoralty candidate Tucker Gomberg, who, to draw attention to homelessness issues, chained himself to a toilet at Princess Margaret Hospital, which he wants converted to a homeless shelter.
The voters have the final say here. The voters decide who they're going to elect. And the pundits and the experts have no right to tell them what the results will be before the numbers are counted.
Counting those numbers this year is a new computer system, an electronic scanner that reads ballots as they're handed in, immediately rejecting improper ballots, and keeping the tabulated results secret until the polls close at 8 o'clock. The system is working better than the city thought it would, with only 16 machines breaking down. But early on, there were about 150 polling stations where the machines were rejecting ballots. The problem? They were being inserted improperly.
I guess a good analogy would be if you go to Loblaws and they take your Campbell's soup can and go across and it doesn't get it. It's because it didn't see it because you didn't do it properly.
Opinion on the new voting system, though, is mixed.
It works for me. It's pretty clear. You won't make a mistake the way they have it.
I think previous year was better, maybe for older people.
The polls are open tonight until 8 o'clock. Mike Wise, CBC News, Toronto.
Of course, the race with the highest profile tonight is the one for mayor. We're having a look now at Mel Lastman's campaign party, if we can just bring that up. We will. It is at the Capitol Event Theatre at Yonge and Castlefield. Robin Smythe joins me now outside of the broadcast center. Robin, it's not a big surprise what's going to happen tonight, many people say.
No, that's exactly right. If we step back a little bit, there are about 24 candidates for mayor. Among them, a cross-dressing supermodel. We have a busker, Ben Kerr. He's run before. He usually sings at Yonge and Lawrence, or Yonge and Bloor, rather. And there's a street artist. Now, despite the large number of the candidates, it hasn't been a particularly vigorous race. In fact, there was no all-candidates debate. There aren't any lawn signs out for Mel Lastman, for instance. In fact, some critics have said Mel Lastman has been avoiding events. But if he wins at the end of the night, Mel Lastman will be building on a 28-year career as a politician. Quite a story, Carol.
What's the plan there tonight?
Well, we're going to be at that Capitol Event Theatre that we were looking at a little bit earlier, and Mel Lastman will be there too. They expect him to arrive sometime after 8 o'clock when the polls close, at which point he'll be giving a speech. Now, his supporters and organizers hope that will be a victory speech. They're planning for a big party, and we'll be there. One more thing, Carol, we'll have a look at what kind of mayor Mayor Lastman has been over the years for Toronto and for North York, and that's tonight at 11.
Yes, we'll see you then.
See you.
Okay. And another first in this election, the City of Toronto is making it easier to cast a ballot for some of its residents, those without a permanent home. Here at Street City and at 18 other homeless shelters throughout the city, election officials have set up polling stations. In past municipal elections, those without a permanent address couldn't vote. It's hoped thousands of homeless people will exercise their democratic right, as they will be doing also for the first time in the federal election later this month. Also tonight, we might be in for some tough races. That's because the number of councillors has been reduced to 44. Our urban affairs reporter John Northcott joins me now with that story. Good evening, John.
Hi, Carol. I'm at the rotunda of Toronto City Hall. Behind us, the monitors, where throughout the evening we will be watching and giving you the results of the election. Some say depending on who wins and where, it could affect the balance of power on council. The mayor is only one person and has only one vote, at the ballot box and at council. But as Mel Lastman cast his vote, he must be wondering about other candidates, those who might support him or those who might vote against his agenda. The deputy mayor, Case Oates, is running in Ward 29, Broadview Greenwood. He's up against former school board chair Gail Nyberg. Also running in the ward, former East York councillor Bob Dale and teacher Nick Radia. Further east in Ward 32, Beaches East York, 5 candidates square off, but the most active battle is between incumbent Sandra Busson and school trustee David Mole. The other 3 candidates are Paul Azzarello, Bruce Breyer, and Jeffrey Dorman. The newly rejigged Ward 13 could prove unlucky to one of 2 council veterans. Councillor David Miller voted against the controversial Adams Mine proposal to ship the city's garbage north. He's up against Councillor Bill Sondercook, the Works Committee chair. In another incumbent battle, Ward 21 St. Paul's sees Councillor Rob Davis and Joe Mahevic squaring off, also running Chai Calavar. And in the north end, Ward 22 St. Paul's, it's the Battle of the Walkers, Councillor Mike Walker up against business person Jim Walker. And further north, Ann Johnston goes head-to-head against another council veteran, Milton Berger. And it's been a hard fight for all of them, lots of slogging, lots of up and down stairs, up and down streets as they canvass the various wards. The fun part for me was I just had to drive around and get to visit some interesting parts of the city.
Hey, John, are you in for a long night? Are we in for a long night?
Well, I think we could be in some cases. Some of these races are quite close. In fact, I can't tell you, I'll tell you after the polls close, but I've received even from people supporting the various candidates, in some of the wards, they're saying it could be within a couple of hundred votes in some cases. So that takes a little longer for those results to be finalized.
And what kind of campaign would you say this has been overall?
Well, in some of the wards, there have been some quite dirty campaigning. Trouble with signs, putting signs in places where perhaps they shouldn't be officially put, people tearing down other people's signs. So in some of those close-fought wards, there have been some dirty tricks, some misinformation going back and forth, and we'll see if any of it worked at 8 o'clock.
All right, John, we'll see you shortly after that tonight.
Okay.
You should also know that we will have extensive coverage of this vote on our website, along with all of the results as they come in. You'll find related articles about the vote, the wards, the close races, and the candidates. There's our website and the address, or it should be our website and the address. Yes, there it is now. Just follow the link to all of our special coverage. A big cleanup in the beach today after a 6-alarm fire destroyed a row of businesses and homes overnight. Firefighters spent more than 6 hours bringing the stubborn blaze under control. It happened on Queen Street, just east of Woodbine. Beatrice Politi has more.
Helen Kotzelainen couldn't believe her eyes.
God, just to see them smash in the window and see the flames. And then the flames on top of the roof, it was like something out of a movie.
She lost everything she had in her apartment on Queen Street East. She'd only lived there since September.
I just thank my lucky stars in my life, you know, and I wasn't in there. And I have lots of friends, and everyone's been really supportive. Sorry.
No one was hurt in the fire. Firefighters say they believe it started in the basement of this upholstery store and climbed through the walls. The flames engulfed 3 more buildings, destroying tenants' homes and 4 businesses. Beaches Cigar and Convenience, Vienna Upholstery, Queen Street Natural Foods, and Ups and Downs Clothing Store. After hours of firefighting, hot spots are still popping up in the debris. John Bernardi considers himself a lucky man. He owns the buildings next door.
There's a fire break of about 12 inches and then a solid brick walls between the 2 buildings. You know. So, and the wind also was blowing in the opposite direction, which also saved us.
The owner of this store wasn't as lucky.
I have no store, I have no business. And also my personal clothes are also everything. All our personal stuff is there because we just moved around the area. It's bad.
The Ontario Fire Marshal is investigating. City engineers will decide if the building should come down because of structural damage. Red Cross and some local merchants have offered clothing and help to the victims.
Firefighters still don't know what caused the fire that gutted these businesses, but they do estimate the damage at $2 to $3 million. Beatrice Politi, CBC News, Toronto.
It's that time of year when Maclean's magazine rates the country's universities. This year, there was good news for all 3 Toronto schools. Starting with medical doctoral universities, in terms of being best overall, U of T ranked #1. In the category of comprehensive universities, that's where they measure the quality of undergraduate and graduate programs, York University was #5. And Ryerson also makes the list in terms of primarily undergraduate universities. It gets a ranking of #2. Maclean's has been doing this survey every year since 1991. The magazine puts the list together by talking to high school guidance counselors, university officials, and business leaders from across the country. Still to come, sports, entertainment, and your weather forecast, and our election night coverage continues here on Canada Now in Toronto after this.
You don't get to be the world's largest fun company by standing still. That's why we're in 20 countries, in 24 different time zones, on 5 continents worldwide. We're the ultimate guide for over 15 million investors, making sure that the world and everything in it revolves around you. Fidelity. Get the world's largest mutual fund company working for you.
This is my job, the label. People think Moores is just a place to buy suits. Actually, we make them first. That's why we put our name right here. Because Moores isn't just a store. Moores is us. And that's a label we are all proud to wear.
Well made, well priced, well dressed. Moores.
Caldo, calduccio, caldissimo. Aspetta,
Wouldn't it be great if you could buy anything, anywhere, with your cell phone? Wireless e-business, coming from IBM.
I'm shopping for my husband. Why don't we go to the men's department? Oh, no, thanks. What I have in mind is this. It's midnight. The kids are asleep. The presents are wrapped. Chilled champagne, scented candles are everywhere. And... oh, I've got the perfect gift. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. It's midnight. The kids are asleep.
The Bay. Shopping is good.
We are continuing with our Toronto Vote coverage. I'll tell you more about our full coverage plans a little later in the show. Right now, let's turn to sports tonight. It looks like the LPGA is staying in Canada. The fear was that Canada would lose the event altogether because of new laws banning tobacco sponsors. Du Maurier was a huge sponsor of women's golf, putting on the Du Maurier Classic every year. But the Bank of Montreal has stepped in. The tournament takes place next August in Aurora, and by the way, it's called the Canadian Women's Open. 2 of the NHL's former greats are being inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Joe Mullen grew up on the streets of New York City, where he learned his early hockey skills on roller skates. He was the first player born in the United States to score 1,000 points. Mullen won Stanley Cups with the Calgary Flames and Pittsburgh Penguins. Denis Savard, meanwhile, holds many Chicago Blackhawks records. They include most points in a season, 132. Savard later won a Stanley Cup playing with the team that overlooked him in his draft year, the Montreal Canadiens. Still in sports, the Toronto Argonauts has introduced its new management team. The Argos' new president is Jeff Giles, the outgoing president of the CFL.
I'm so glad that I don't have to be neutral anymore. For 6 years, I couldn't have anybody to cheer for. I just had to be hope for the good games. Now I have someone to cheer for.
Head coach Michael Clemens takes on the added responsibility of vice president of football operations. Former Argo player Paul Massotti becomes general manager. In entertainment news tonight, pop diva Celine Dion may be back on stage again soon. She received 2 American Music Award nominations today. Celine is nominated for Best Female Artist in the pop rock category, along with Christina Aguilera and Faith Hill. She's also up against Mark Anthony and Faith Hill again in the adult contemporary category. Britney Spears will be hosting the 28th Annual American Music Awards. It will be broadcast on January 8th. The new Beatles album has turned out to be a bit of a disappointment. The HMV store in London opened its doors at midnight this morning, expecting a big crowd. That didn't happen. Only 15 people showed up to purchase the new album titled Number One. Now, maybe things will be different here in North America. It's due in stores here tomorrow. The Beatles are not only limiting their efforts to record stores, they've also recently launched a new book, and they're about to launch their first official website. The news isn't great for stock markets or investors. The major North American stock markets continue to slide. A lot of that has to do with technology stocks. They took a beating after another major computer company reported disappointing earnings. Robert Lack reports.
It's a new week and a new round of bad news for technology stocks on Wall Street. First up, Hewlett-Packard, best known for its line of printers and personal computers. The company reported earnings well below the expectations of Wall Street analysts.
The reaction to HP's news was harsh and quick, and the short answer to why is because the general investing populace has overreacted now several times, every time earnings announcements come in that are disappointing in any way, shape, or form.
Hewlett-Packard appeared to anticipate the reaction. The earnings were released ahead of schedule to ward off premature leaks of the bad news. And the news did hit stock markets hard. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down, and the NASDAQ was hurt as well, as investors unloaded many other technology stocks. The damage on the NASDAQ pushed the composite index below 3,000 for the first time in more than a year. It's now down more than 40% from its all-time high last March, which by many definitions signals a bear market.
So suddenly what you've done is you've layered a lot of uncertainty over this market. And hence, you know, it's been sort of kicked to the ground. It's very, very difficult to come back up. So, yeah, I would suggest that we're now in the point of the market where perhaps a small B bear is not out of the question.
With the NASDAQ in a bear market, investors are looking for new places to park their money, sectors that have not been hit by a wave of bad earnings. Today, oil stocks were hot. That after an OPEC decision early Monday not to pump any more oil into the market for now.
It's a matter of being prudent and careful while moderating prices within a reasonable level.
But the parade of bad news may well continue this week as investors shift their attention to retail stocks. Home Depot reports its earnings tomorrow and has already warned that the numbers will likely be disappointing. Robert Lack, CBC News, Toronto.
Now back to the election. Let me introduce to you the 2 people who will help us with our election coverage. The 2 people who can do something the rest of us here cannot, voice their opinions. And they do have opinions. Gordon Chong, the city councilor for Don Parkway, who's not running for re-election. Good evening to you.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And Clifton Joseph, a political commentator quite familiar to CBC viewers. Good evening to you.
Hi, how are you doing, Cal?
I'm doing very well. Now let me just get a quick thing off the top. Do you both agree Mel's going to be the mayor after this is all over?
I think so.
Yeah, okay. So given that, what will you be looking for tonight? Clifton, let me start with you.
Well, I'd definitely be looking for, as been predicted, has been talked about, a leftward swing within the members of council, because I believe that the mayor's been running a kind of imperial mayorship right now that needs to change. We need people who will be dealing more forcefully with the issues and not being cuddling up to special interests and to the business community. And I think that there's so many issues like homelessness. We need to get some people to deal with the police force that's out of hand in this city. We need to deal with the whole question of young people, squeegee kids. There's so many issues we have that the mayor has not been dealing with, and since he's going to be probably winning tonight, I think that we need a strong so-called left of center bunch of councillors to give him a run for his money. Otherwise, democracy will be hurt in this city.
Gordon, what do you think? Do you think that will be the case?
I think there's going to be a proportional increase in the left of center members of council, but I don't think left of center councillors will dominate. The center and right of center will hold, but clearly the left is going to increase its representation, and there are a number of tight races.
Okay, which races will you be looking at specifically?
Well, Sonder Cook and Miller, Case Otis and Gail Nyberg in Broadview Greenwood, and out in Etobicoke between Giansante and Lindsay Luby. Down in Jack Layton's ward, I suspect Jack's going to pull through, but he's going to be given a good run from Linda Lynch and Jeff Layton.
Now, Clifton, you had a lot of emotion, a lot of passion, talking about the issues that you think should be on the table, that in fact always are on the table, whether we want them to be or not, in election campaigns. Final word to you before we check back with both of you later this evening. Why do you think that voter turnout is looking to be low today, that more people don't share that passion?
Well, I mean, certainly politicians have been alienating themselves from the general public. I don't think politicians do enough to reach out to the general public to see what's happening. And I mean, young people, for instance, they say young people don't vote, but we've seen increased political activity by young people. It's just not happening within the political framework that it's been defined. And we need, in this city and in this country, period, to change that so that more citizens can have more of a say. And I think, Carol, that what will probably make a swing tonight to show up the lapdogism of a lot of the councillors who support the mayor is the garbage deal. And I think that might totally be one of the things that really shift this election. All
right, we're going to take a look. Thank you for that. Thank you to both of you. Look forward to talking to you in more in depth a little later on at 11.
Right on, right on.
Coming up next, your weather for the week and more details on our election wrap-up tonight. Stay with us, please.
Tonight on CBC, laughs with air bars. It's a living this hour, made in Canada, and a federal election national town hall.
What kind of family needs a wagon that's engineered beyond belief? A family that's got places to go, and things to do, and new experiences to explore. A family that appreciates the value of a wagon that's incredibly stingy on fuel. A family just like yours that lives life beyond belief. The 2001 Esteem Wagon from Suzuki, engineered beyond belief.
Style is creating your own look. It's being yourself. Style is being confident in who you are.
Call Valley Total Fitness now and start feeling confident about the way you look. Join today for just $29 down and only $29 a month. We've got exciting new classes, innovative equipment, and friendly, motivating instructors. Everything you need to feel great. Start creating your own look.
Call Valley at 1-800-FITNESS.
Just $29 down and only $29 a month.
You ready?
Okay. Wheel, yum, air.
This couple is playing Mad Gap.
Wheel, yum, air, ream, he. Wheel, yum, air, ream, air.
Mad Gap, the new game where the words you read sound like something completely different. Of course, you don't know what it is until you hear it.
Will you marry? Will you marry me?
Yes, I will.
Mad Gap. It's not what you say, it's what you hear.
Taking a look at the weather tonight, cloudy with showers overnight, the low near 2 degrees. For tomorrow, brace yourselves. We could see flurries, the high near 5, and there's more of the white stuff. Where that came from, here's a 3-day outlook. Wednesday, chance of flurries or rain with a high near 6, the low near 2. Thursday, again, possible flurries, the high near 5, the low near 1. For Friday, cloudy with scattered showers, the high near 6 and a low near 1, and that's the weather forecast. And coming up tonight at 11 o'clock, we will have an election special. That is it for us right here on Front Street West. But this being election night in the city, we're not really going anywhere. We'll be staying here at the CBC Broadcast Center all night long, monitoring all of the developments in the city vote. Our coverage will include John Northcott and Robin Smythe, who will tell us about the race for mayor. So join us for all of that starting at 11 o'clock. But if you want to check in with us, we'll be on at 8 and 9 for a couple of minutes as well. See you then.